Okay, I think we are ready to get started. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. Welcome. My name is Sandy Alexander, and I am Ed's wife, Elijah's mom, and stepmother to Tyler and Matthew. On behalf of our family, we would like to thank each of you for joining us in what we hope will be a beautiful celebration of the very special life of Edwin Elijah Alexander. First, I'd like to recognize just how many people are here today, up here in the sanctuary and downstairs in the fellowship hall. What a tribute to the great man that Ed was, and all of the different relationships he made over his life. There are so many people that loved Ed. I'm not one for speech making. I will leave that to the Alexanders. But I do recognize that there are many people in this room who have known and loved Ed for much, much longer than I have. And I know this because I alone received 217 sympathy cards, and there were quite a few of them that began with the words, "Dear Sandy, you don't know me, but Ed was my ... So he might have been your colleague, or taught you or your child, or maybe even both of you, math at some point. Maybe he coached your kids, or you, in baseball, or you played baseball, softball, or hockey with Ed. Some of you have been to deer camp, and many of us are related by blood or marriage. Ed made so many connections in his life. He was bold, he was loud, he was stubborn, professional, passionate. He always used your name multiple times over the course of a conversation, even if he was using the wrong name. He was a talented baseball coach, a great husband, and an even better father. He was so many things to so many people. I tried to think of how I would describe Ed in just one word. And the word that kept coming to mind was honest. Ed had so much integrity. He was the most honest person I have ever known. You always knew exactly what he was thinking because he would tell you. This actually made it really difficult when it came to buying him gifts for his birthday or Christmas, because he never ever pretended to like something just to spare my feelings. That took some getting used to. So today we will share many memories, some that will be new even to me. And my hope is that we will all leave here today with a deeper understanding and appreciation of exactly how much Ed Alexander was loved in so many different ways. The songs that are part of today's celebration were chosen to reflect some of the things that Ed loved most. Summer mornings, sipping coffee in the sunshine and listening to the birds, United States history, and happiness. So we hope that you'll join us by singing along, and you'll find the words inserted in your program. I will ask that if you have a cell phone with you, if you could please turn it off or put it on silent. That would be really helpful. I'd like to thank Pastor David Coons for his kindness and generosity in helping make today's celebration special, and welcome him up to lead us in a prayer.
I want to extend my condolences to your family, to all of you, and also welcome you into this time of remembrance, also this time of mourning. And the passage that came to my mind this week as I was thinking about our time together here today was a story from John 11. In the church worldwide, church globally, we are in the season of Lent, and that means we're following Jesus on his way to Jerusalem and to the cross in a few weeks, and then Easter morning and resurrection. But one of the, in my mind, one of the most beautiful stories in all of the Gospels is a story about a man with two sisters named Mary and Martha. And Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem, and he stops in the village of Bethany, where these two sisters live. And he goes there because their brother, Lazarus, has died. And Jesus knows this. And Jesus was, from what we can tell, close with his family. These were not just acquaintances, these were deep friends. And we're told that on his way into the village, he saw the sister Martha. And she brought to him her anger, her disappointment, her grief, the loss of her brother. And Jesus reminded him that he is the resurrection and the life, and that anyone who believed in him would one day live even after dying. And he proceeds from there further in, nearer to the family home, and he's met by Mary, the other sister. And Mary is overcome, and she falls at the feet of Jesus. And she too is angry at the reality of death. And she says, "If you had been here, my brother would not have died." And when Jesus sees Mary weeping, when he sees Martha weeping with her, we're told that something happened to Jesus himself. It says, he became deeply troubled in spirit. And he said, Where have you put him? Where have you put Lazarus? And they said, "Lord, come and see." And the shortest verse in all of Scripture, verse 35 in John 11, simply says, as Jesus came to that tomb, he wept. He broke down as these two sisters had. And the people standing nearby said, "See how much he loved him." I think the thing that astonishes me about that story is Jesus has come there knowing that he will call Lazarus forth from that grave. He will bring resurrection to that family. And yet he's also a human. He's also someone who fully feels the weight of their grief and enters into that with them because he loves them. And so today I wanted to invite you into a prayer that reminds us that the Spirit of God is present with us as we do this together, as we remember, as we grieve, maybe as you're angry, as you're grateful, all of the things that come into these times. So I'd invite you, if you're comfortable, to stand with me. And this is a responsive prayer. If you're willing, I will read and lead us in the first part of the text here. And then where you see the text bolded, let me invite you to respond, and all of us will read those sections together. O Jesus, acquainted with all our griefs, prepare our hearts to enter now this space of grieving. O God of all comfort, lead us humbly into this time of remembrance. O Spirit who moves in the midst of our sorrows, fill us with your compassion. The sharing of such sorrows is indeed a good and holy work, Lord. For you also, Jesus, willingly entered the wounds of this world and wept with us in our brokenness. And you have promised us that wherever your children are gathered in your name, you will be present as well. So be present with us now, O Spirit of God. Let our presence be sensed as a token of your presence. Let our concern bear unspoken witness to the redemption your love will one day work. even unto the utter and unimaginably glorious reversal of our loss. Now speak, act, and comfort, O Christ. Shudder us into the sharing of the sorrow. May our hearts be as your heart here. Our voices as your voice. Our hands as your hands. Our tears as your tears. Amen. Now have a reading to share with you this afternoon.
Hi, I'm Laura, one of Edwin's sisters, and Edwin and Sandy asked me a couple months ago to do a reading, and I'm honored to do so. This happens to be my grandmother Mary, Elizabeth Stone Alexander's Bible. I don't know how I got it, but... So just two short passages. The first one is from the Old Testament, Isaiah. Fear not, for I have redeemed thee. I have called thee by thy name. Thou art mine. When thou passest through the waters, I will be with thee, and through the rivers, they shall not overflow thee. When thou walkest through the fire, thou shalt not be burned, neither shall the flame kindle upon thee. For I am the Lord thy God, the Holy One of Israel, thy Savior. The second reading is from St. Paul's letter to the Romans. For I am persuaded that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other creature shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Amen. It's my great honor to introduce Edwin's eldest, Tyler.
Hello, my name is Tyler. My daughter Caroline here is in the front row. My father, Edwin Elijah Alexander, was a great man, perhaps the greatest among us. This is no hyperbole or cliche. All of us know and have felt the truth of this. He was an icon, a hero, my best friend, a friend to my friends, and the best father a son could ever want. To me, he will always be young, strong, athletic, dark-haired, blue-eyed, and healthy. Through his life, he gave us all an example of what real class, grace, dignity, courage, and heroism look like, at a time when we are desperately craving such examples. His time on earth, cut short though it may have been, was a gift to all of us. He was the happiest and perhaps luckiest person I've ever known. He was blessed by so much, and he knew it. He was blessed to be born to Wayne and Martha Alexander. He was blessed to grow up on Steeplebush Hill, right over here, where he enjoyed the company of his large family, the woods and fields around his house, the large gardens that his family kept, his beagles, bicycle rides to Desso's across the street to buy Mountain Dew, red licorice, and baseball cards, learning to skate on a nearby beaver pond, fishing the Lee and Browns rivers, and learning how to work and how to love in a family that never hid its love for one another. He was blessed throughout his life to live in places with land that could be worked, solitude, beautiful views, and neighbors that he loved and who loved him. He was blessed to work a steady job for 35 years that he brought passion to every day, beginning each morning at 5 a.m. by writing lesson plans at the kitchen table. He was blessed to have fallen in love with my mother, and then with Sandy, and with the children that they raised together. He was blessed to have been so close with his 10 siblings, and he was blessed to know, before he left us, how much he meant to all of us. My father was his best self in the classroom, on the baseball diamond, in his woodlot, in his sugar house, working along the bank of a small trout stream, or in the deer camp lounge, employing his unparalleled skills as a storyteller on a cold November night next to the wood stove. Certain places were sacred to him: Wheelock Mountain, Shadow Lake, and the Perrin Farm in Glover, where he learned how to collect and boil sap in his youth. He was a first-rate professional who prided himself on his high expectations, rigor of instruction, and ability to engage students with boundless energy, sense of humor, and self-confidence. Julie, Matt, and I, several of my cousins, and many of our friends can all personally attest to his gifts as an educator. He taught me what teaching means. In addition to teaching me about factoring, the quadratic formula, the Pythagorean theorem, the ratios of the sides of a 30, 60, 90 triangle, again, Caroline and my wife Amy, how to write a geometric proof, and SOHCAHTOA, he taught me a few other valuable lessons. Here's a sampling. One of my early childhood memories is of having my right foot planted in a metal bucket, so I learned not to move it while swinging at a baseball. My first introduction to the Civil War happened at the kitchen table, where he enraptured me with his account of the Gettysburg Campaign, of Lee invading the North to take the war out of Virginia. He taught me that Eastern hop hornbeam has 3 other common names: hardhack, ironwood, and leverwood, and I quickly learned why. He taught me how to get a brush pile going and how to work the edges in with a pitchfork. He called it the tireless worker. He taught me how to read the tension on a felled tree and how to read a block of wood, how to take 2 bases on a walk, how to throw a pitch out, how to deceive runners on first and third with a throw to shortstop, how to slide, how to steal home, and how to conduct a squeeze play. He gave me the talk on, guess where, a baseball diamond, the third base line to be exact. Without him, I probably wouldn't have much of an appreciation for Paul Newman, Sidney Poitier, Alfred Hitchcock, Humphrey Bogart, Grace Kelly, Gregory Peck, Gary Cooper, Jimmy Stewart, or Andy Griffith. He was Gregory Peck, Gary Cooper, Jimmy Stewart, and Andy Griffith. He taught me how to feed line into a current, how to keep the tip up, and how to feel a bite with my left hand. Most of you probably don't know that I shot him once while we were bird hunting. Maybe you do. Not my proudest moment. As I ran over to him, my heart racing to see him with his pant leg rolled up, studying the blood running down his leg, he was calm. As he limped out of the woods, he seemed just as concerned about me as he was himself, and taught me what grace under pressure looks like. It was something out of a Hemingway novel, a preview of the intrepid courage that we've all seen in the last 2 years. He always told me how far back the nearest runner was. Sometimes that happened to be Dave Mans, if you're in here somewhere, Dave. He seemed to be at every race, at every mile. He stayed with me every Wednesday night in the summer of 2003 and brought me dinner when I lived by myself in a camp in Lewis, Vermont. It was the highlight of every week. He often remarked, quoting his grandfather, Ernest Perrin, "Load light, go often." He showed me what support meant in hard times. Each time Caroline wound up in the hospital, he showed me that he was here for me. I could go on. He had a gregarious, loving, happy, outgoing, larger-than-life personality that never waned even after his cancer diagnosis. At times, he may have been a bit too gregarious. His infectious magnetism explains why he developed so many meaningful friendships over the course of his lifetime. He was a man of the people, a Vermonter in the best sense. And a proud American citizen who was imbued with a sense of real patriotism. He actually believed in that most American of ideals, equality. He was moved upon his several visits to the Old North Bridge at Concord, Massachusetts, often reciting Emerson's Concord hymn. By the rude bridge that arched the flood, their flag to April's breeze unfurled, here once the embattled farmers stood and fired the shot heard round the world. Every April 19th, he said that. Or the bloody angle at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, or Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia. And he understood what those places meant. He admired and respected the sacrifices of the likes of the Concord Minutemen, the 20th Maine, or Fred and Claire Turcotte. He valued time-honored traditions, but was never afraid to embrace new ideas. He knew what hard work was and despised any semblance of pretentiousness and self-promotion. He did things not for show, photo ops, or hashtags, but for the simple doing of them. He knew who he was and where he came from, and never pretended to be anything that he wasn't. He loved the land, the waters, the flora and fauna, the towns, the history, and the people of his native state. He was also a gentleman and more cultured than he often let on. He sang tunes from his favorite musicals, Camelot, The Music Man, My Fair Lady, Man of La Mancha, Guys and Dolls, and The West Side Story. He frequently quoted Shakespeare's King Lear and Richard III. He listened to good music, the Moody Blues, Bob Dylan, Joan Baez, Bill Monroe, the Beatles, Gordon Lightfoot, James Taylor, George Jones, Frank Sinatra, and others, the soundtrack of my youth. He closely followed the news, and he read a lot of American history, especially in his retirement. He was especially fond of presidential biographies, including those of Washington, Lincoln, Grant, Garfield, and T.R. He knew, probably better in his final 2 years than at any other time, how loved he was by the hundreds of family members, colleagues, friends, neighbors, students, and athletes whose lives he touched and bettered in his 68 years. His courage in the face of his diagnosis, reminiscent of one of his heroes, Lou Gehrig, was a true inspiration. He loved life, all of it, for its own sake. His spirit, wisdom, kindness, courage, rock-solid integrity, honesty, and love will live on in the hearts of all who knew him. Mountain Lion Clear.
Well, it's my great misfortune to speak after Tyler today. But Dad was pretty clear about the order he wanted things in today, so I will just suffer through in the wake of that performance. Thanks, Dad. All right, so I got a few visuals here. But the first thing I wanted to say actually is a few words not about Dad, but about his caregiver for the last 2.5 years. Sandy deserves recognition today for the utter love, patience, compassion, dignity, and other things that she showed Dad every single day. I'm sure there are other people here who know what it's like for a diagnosis like this to just, take how it takes over your family. From managing all of the medical appointments, the small pharmacy that it takes to deal with a disease of this severity, taking over virtually all of the household duties, teaching full-time for much of his disease, all while trying to maintain some sense of normalcy for herself and her own rich social contacts, for Elijah, and for their own experience as a family unit. She never lost her patience, and we all know that Dad was a man who could often test that. Dad often spoke of how lucky he felt to have such a doting and capable caregiver, and I can add that for myself, as the, quote, family medical person, it certainly took a lot of pressure off of me knowing that he had this smart, scientifically and medically literate person looking out for him on a daily basis. I just didn't have to worry about the quality of care he was getting or feeling like I needed to be involved at every medical juncture. I feel like, it's not just Dad's qualities that his illness revealed. Sandy showed us what she's made of too. And I know that Dad being able to feel so loved and cared for certainly increased the quality of his life, especially, towards the end. And I know I can say this on behalf of the family, but, Sandy, I'll always be grateful for you to you for how good you were to Dad. So that said, I wanted to, my main purpose here is to highlight what is probably the first thing that many of us think of when we think of Dad, and it's already been mentioned a number of times, that, of course, he was quite a character. I think, clearly there's plenty of people out there who can make a few good jokes and maybe have some amusing mannerisms, but Dad was usually just on another level that many of us just never get to. But don't take my word for it. Let's let Dad show us himself. Let's see if I can. All right. So first, Exhibit A here is just at first glance, you might think it's a pretty benign picture of some brothers and friends splitting wood at deer camp. But if we take a closer look. I want to go back here. All right. What can I add to that? So, okay, next, here's a pretty average teacher's portrait. Although in Dad's case, the exuberance of his grin was always above average, but all in all, a fairly normal teacher's portrait. But he was equally as capable of something like this. You can see he's there in his classroom, his blackboard with all the math assignments is behind him. But again, that's just a man who's on another level. And only he could pull that off and have it fairly well represent his baseline. So next, before I show it here, but many of you may remember the Ice Bucket Challenge from several years ago, where people would video themselves getting water dumped on them in the name of raising awareness and money for Lou Gehrig's disease, or ALS. I'll first show one that just kind of what a typical one looked like. That happens to be George W. Bush's. Let's just take a quick look at that.
Be splashed with ice water, so I'm simply going to write you a check. Ow!
That check is for me.
Okay, let's compare that to Dad's.
I'm Ed Alexander, and I accept the Lou Gehrig's Ice Bucket Challenge as nominated by my sister Martha Alexander. I would like to nominate Sergio Rodriguez and Sarah Giannetti, who witnessed this for the first time. Okay! Ah! Oh, that's cool! Oh, so cool! Oh, no! Ah!
So again, most of us will leave this earth having never been on that level. And, even if we tried, it would just be too forced and awkward. But for Dad, it wasn't awkward. It was natural for him. And, to the benefit of all of us. Let's just enjoy that one more time.
Okay! Ah!
Well,
Hi, I'm Ed Alexander, and Okay! Ah! Oh, that's cool! Oh, so cool! Oh, no! Ah!
and as a worthy encore, here is Elijah's Ice Bucket Challenge video. Sam, can you help me out here? Thank you.
Accepted the Ice Bucket Challenge from Kyle Vargas, and I'm nominating Jake Cronin and Tima.
All right, Lodgy! Whoa! Oh, Lodgy! Wee-haw!
All right, one last example. Here's just a little clip from our fishing trip last summer. We're just kind of rinsing off in the river at the end of the day. You can see Dad sort of at the top there. Please excuse the rest of us in this clip. All right, I'll leave this up here while I end. I could go on, of course, as I'm sure many of you could in your own minds with your own memories of Dad, but I just wanted to kind of wrap up by pointing out that, of course, Dad wasn't just a clown. Tyler, of course, just highlighted his many qualities, but I just wanted to reiterate a couple things that stand out to me about Dad, and I feel like had an impact on me. The first is his emphasis on humility that I always noticed his whole life. While he never hesitated to praise us or tell us he was proud of us for something, he always seemed just as equally focused on making sure that we never felt too extraordinary or, in a good way, or made sure that we didn't engage in too much self-promotion or attention-seeking behavior. I think of Dad as just an utterly genuine and sincere person. He always asked people more about themselves than he ever tried to talk about himself. And he always seemed just as comfortable engaging with and, recognizing the value of, like a salt-of-the-earth, blue-collar guy as much as he did, for example, my mom's banking colleagues. I always noticed that. And so I think most people here understand the enormity of his loss. Especially for those of us close to him, how do we move on from a loss of his magnitude? Nothing we can do will bring him back, of course. And speaking strictly from my own personal beliefs, I'm not banking on anything other than the time I had here in this life with him to make myself feel better. For me, I think it's a matter of, adapting to this new reality and learning to live with it, however incomplete that might feel. And I was talking about this with Dad in his last few weeks, and he said something that kind of stuck with me. He just said, "Matt, life is for the living." And I think I know what he meant, but and while I will never stop thinking about him or feeling the ache of missing him every single day, I think ultimately honoring him and carrying on his legacy means doing more than perseverating on his absence or staring at photos of him, although I will do plenty of that, or certainly feeling sorry for myself or anything like that. Seems to me the best way of carrying on his legacy is to just invest in new experiences and subsequently memories with those of us who we still have. And I think just for myself as an example, a big focus of that has to be striving to be the same just consummate father and role model that he was. So that my own son might have half the father that I had. That's how I can honor him. And that's how his legacy continues in my mind. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to my cousins, Addie and Jesse, to lead us in a song.
Just give me a second. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Singing, don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Rise up this morning, smile with the rising sun. 3 little birds sit by my doorstep, singing sweet songs of melodies pure and true, saying, this is my message to you. Singing, don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Singing, don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Rise up this morning, smile at the rising sun. 3 little birds sit by my doorstep, singing sweet songs, melodies pure and true, saying, this is my message to you. Singing, don't worry about a thing. Worry about a thing, oh, every little thing is gonna be alright. Singing, don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright.
Hello to you all. We are Edwin's 6 sisters, and some of you don't know all of us, some of you know one of us, and in honor of my father, we're all going to make sure everybody knows who everybody is. In order of age. Joan, who is 1 year older than Ed. Lisa. Laura, whom you already met. Our resident twin girls. Mary and Martha. Yeah, and me, Julie. So we'd like to share just a few of the memories that we have written together of our brother Edwin. Just a few weeks ago, we were watching Wesley's boy Cole running in a track someplace. I was watching from France. And he was running a relay, and they were like, oh, this is bookending. And I was like, what does that mean, bookending? Bookending is a relay when you put the best person at the end. So this is kind of like a relay. Joan's going to start, Joan's going to finish. Bookending, yes. Yeah.
Okay. And we did all work on this together by email, phone,
Yeah.
whatever. When you share 10 siblings, you share most experiences with 10 others. When there are 5 boys and 6 girls, and deer camp is part of the equation, at least in our family, there's a big chunk of memories of Ed that only the boys have. And you are sure to hear some deer camp stories when they follow us. Although we girls were rarely at deer camp, we did share a lot of the fun growing up with Ed, our oldest brother, and have many fond memories of time playing with him. When we played Village in the basement, Ed was the policeman who arrested us if we were speeding too fast on our trikes and scooters. Then there were the summer camps built in the woods. When we played Army there, Ed led the way in our battles, pegging milkweed pods at each other. We also played soldier in the living room, and Ed was the drill sergeant, lining us all up, inspecting our form, sending us to the prison cells if we broke composure. And it's funny to think back that when Ed did, I remember when he, like as a seventh grader, he wanted to be a Secret Service man, and I think he was training all his beginning life for that. He was the monster sitting at the end of the hallway who would try to catch us as we ran by. We spent lots of summer days getting cooled off at Turcotte's Pond, and if Ed was going swimming, suddenly everyone wanted to go. Summer nights meant wiffle ball games in the driveway that went on long past dark. We could always count on Ed to add so much life to our fun, smiling, whistling, singing, and laughing.
This is the bookending part I was referring to. So, all of us siblings have memories of Ed, the mathematician. Growing up, when we had trouble with our math homework, we knew who to go to. Sorry, Peter. We knew who to go to. Ed could always explain it in a way that made sense. We all remember his advice for algebra. Get all the numbers on one side of the equation and all the letters on the other. When he taught at MMU, several of his nieces and nephews, and even his own children, had the privilege of having him as their math teacher. But I had the unique experience of having my brother as my math teacher. And I have since learned very recently that now students have block days and they have different. When I was at Mount Mansfield, we had the same schedule, 7 periods, the same thing every day, the whole year. So I was seeing Ed every day. Lucky me. I was lucky. So he was 32. And I was a sophomore in his geometry class, and he seemed so old. And of course, now that I'm 51, I'm like, wait a minute, he was really young. As a teacher, he was, in a word, rock star. It was only years later that I discovered several of my friends had crushes on him. This just came up again last summer. His classroom had a Who's on First poster with all the words on it, a Star Trek Enterprise wooden replica, baseball stuff all over the walls. I remember the way he clambered around the classroom, cajoling all these surly teenagers into loving geometry. Part teacher, part entertainer, as he said. His Venn diagrams were a thing to behold. The giant wooden compass with these rubber bands holding the chalk in on the bottom. They are epic in my memory. And sometimes he had to resort to freehanding his circles, and the class would applaud his ability to draw an almost perfect circle, and he would step back. Look at that! He'd holler to the class, how about that Venn diagram? Our satisfaction at hitting the right answer for a long proof was validated through his encouragement. Once when I was sick that year, absent for a test, the following Sunday before ham dinner, he sat me down in a basement bedroom and had me take that test in one of these downstairs bedrooms with the timer. Never losing a moment. He never lost his love for numbers, even after retirement. He couldn't resist giving private math lessons to Elijah. When his nieces, my daughters, emailed tricky math questions from across the ocean, Ed would email back, "This is a fun little problem." And soon there would be a response, a photo, with the problem all worked out, his explanations clear, thorough, direct, the handwriting so comforting to me because it was my geometry teacher explaining it to me in a way that made sense. In later years, in Mom's later years, he was the only one she would allow to balance her checkbook. 2.5 years ago, Ed stood up to deliver our mother's eulogy, and his focus on numbers held strong, and he commenced his speech with one word: 11. And he spoke of the power of the number 11, prime number, our number. Ed enjoyed drawing our focus on it, and we listened. So many of us siblings were teachers, and we have been so touched by the memories that past students have written to us. 2 decades later, Ed and I found ourselves no longer teacher and student, but side by side parenting young children. Ed belonged to the ranks as one of my daughters and all of our nieces and nephews' beloved uncles. Always welcoming, always entertaining, caring, making emotional and physical space for them time after time. Over the years, he has spent time with all of them, going to the Barton Fair, to the circus, fishing, hunting, coaching their Little League and Babe Ruth baseball games, spending time together at Shadow Lake, barbecue after barbecue after barbecue, and laughing and hollering about who wants cheese or not. This is what all of Ed's nieces and nephews carry with them. When Sandy was expecting Elijah, Ed talked to me about what it was like for me to have an old father. As he pondered the age gap that was to be between him and his baby, I told Ed that the 45 years between Dad and me had given me privilege. A father who was retiring, there were less people around, we spent much time one-on-one together. Dad certainly didn't regret being an older father, and we sure know Ed treasured being a father above all, as we treasured him as our brother. The end of the relay is coming. Okay.
In our family, Ed was the first to leave home. He was a senior at Mount Mansfield when the acceptance letter arrived from the Air Force Academy in Colorado. That night at the supper table, we were all rejoicing until minutes later, it dawned on us that Ed would be leaving. For the first time, we realized that our family was about to change. The days of us all living under the same roof were coming to an end. Soon, we sisters were all in tears.
I was one. I probably wasn't.
Okay, that's true. Over the years, our family has learned that we had nothing to worry about because miles have never separated us. And now, once again, Ed is the first to leave. And even though there are many more tears this time, we know that he will always be a part of us, and we will carry him in our hearts forever. Thank you.
And now, without further ado, there should be 4. There are 4. We have a replacement. And that's all. I'll leave them to say the rest of it.
Okay, my page fell out.
My name is Cedric, and first of all, I'd just like to congratulate my sisters for pretty much sticking to the facts in their beautiful words and not creating some memory just out of thin air to be theatrical. You know who I'm talking about. Anyway, and I'm not going to introduce my brothers. They're going to introduce themselves. I could get it wrong, especially with the twins. So we're going to leave it like that. It's my pleasure to share with all of you folks a few of the reasons I was so proud to be Ed's little brother. There are dozens of them, but my time allotment only allows for a few to be mentioned here. Ed was 3 years older than me, which is a big deal when you're a 7-year-old bad boy for the Jericho Little League team, and your brother is the star catcher. A dozen years later, when I was 19 and Ed was 22, the 3-year spread didn't seem very significant. And by then, we had been chore mates around the house and garden, playmates on all kinds of backyard and team sports, and hunting and fishing partners for years. Ed had become a very skilled shortstop for the successful Jericho Town softball team, of which he was the manager. And it was with pride that I admired his quick range, great hands, and strong, accurate throws to first. He was our team leader, very competitive, but committed to fair play and building friendships with teammates and opponents on the field. In 1977, we weren't going to have a team, and I don't recall why. Most likely it was because Ed's summer job wasn't going to allow him to make all of the weeknight games. I bumped into Matt Parisi after church one Sunday in early April and asked if his Underhill team could use another outfielder. He said, sure, but then he asked, what about your brother Ed? Outfielders were a dime a dozen, but a quality shortstop is what successful teams are built around in slow pitch softball. The Underhill League played on Sundays and Wednesdays. And a week later, Ed was on Matt's roster. Eventually, all of my brothers enjoyed many years of playing softball with our wonderful teammates on the Parisi Masonry team. And Joe, I didn't just put that in because I saw you in the audience. What I most admired about Ed, however, was how friendly he was to everyone he met and how giving he was of his time to family, friends, and his community. Of course, we were all very proud of Ed when he was accepted into the Air Force Academy, but after his freshman year, he realized his true passion lay elsewhere, and he decided to leave the academy. He then received a letter from our father strongly suggesting he stick it out for at least another year. And it was then that I was even more proud of Ed when he stuck to his guns and he came home to Vermont. He enrolled in math education at UVM, and this change in his career direction resulted in him having a lasting influence on the lives of many of the over 3,000 students that he taught or coached over his long career. The many wonderful comments from former students and ball players in memory of Ed have meant so much to all of his family. Thank you all.
Hello all. Paul Alexander, third, I guess technically in line, if you count the 8 minutes older than twin Peter. Using the analogy of the 5 C's of a diamond, I'd like to use Ed's love of baseball and softball and his countless hours spent on a ball field to share with you a few brief memories of what I'm calling the 6 C's of Eddie's diamond from the perspective of a younger brother. Cool, competitive, cheerful, caring, courageous, and crucifix. Cool. In 1971, Edwin went off to the United States Air Force Academy and came back not only with spiffy-looking military uniforms, but with new music by bands such as Three Dog Night and Bread. He taught us cool words like Dow, for I doubt it, and the big cheese for someone of high authority. How to do the military pass with the salt and pepper shakers hand over hand. Or how to eat a 90-degree square meal with your utensils. Competitive. The Turcottes moved to Jericho in 1971. And a few years prior, they built a huge pond that we swam in every summer and played countless hockey pickup games on in the winter. These were not typically what you might call user-friendly games, but rather very competitive. And it was not uncommon for you to find yourself as the recipient of one of Ed's infamous Gordie Howe elbows to the chin. Cheerful. He always enjoyed a good laugh and was the main force behind what one of Tyler and Matt's friend coined as AWOD, the Alexander Wail of Delight, which is a very loud aha, often heard after a humorous remark. As Tyler best explains it, it's not exactly laughter, but rather a unique phenomenon. Caring. He would notoriously become a fretter until his boys came out of the woods at dark during hunting seasons, or if they were driving on roads that were subpar. I recall he once contacted the weatherman, Roger Hill, to get an exact weather forecast when Tyler had to drive a particularly long distance in bad weather to Vermont from Maine. Courageous. He was tough, both mentally and physically, particularly down the stretch. And he always answered with a, "I'm fine," when asked how he was feeling, sleeping, or eating. Crucifix. I started wearing daily a crucifix cross when Ed first shared his pancreatic cancer news. Ed would frequently remark to me, "Thanks for wearing the crucifix, Paul. I think it's working." It seemed to give him strength, hope, and energy, and yet it was as important, soothing, and healing for me as it was for him. And in conclusion, as a couple of my sisters mentioned, I wanted to recall for you that Ed gave the eulogy at both our parents' passing, and that he titled our mom's eulogy 11 in acknowledgement of her 11 children, and in which he emphasized how lucky we were to be raised in such a loving and caring family. So I wanted to say to you and Ed today that we will always be 11, not 10 or 9 or eventually 1. Always 11, bonded by the mutual love and respect we have for each other, both in our minds as well as our hearts. We will always miss you, Godfather, but we will never forget you or stop loving you. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Pete Alexander. I'm from Derby, Vermont, and I'm number 9. And I would be number 8, but someone had to force themselves into the world first. And as Mom liked to say, someone had to be the smarter twin and someone had to be the better looking twin. I think that's... Growing up in this town of Jericho in the mid-1960s, I was very fortunate, lucky, I like to say blessed, to have had 8, counting my lovable brother twin, older siblings to look up to learn from, and to love as I grew up. Each one of my siblings, including the 2 that came after me, brought their own personalities, strengths, and weaknesses to the creation of our family dynamics, of which we all knew, that unwavering love for each other was the common ingredient, or in deference to my math teaching brother, the common denominator. In the case of Eddie, the eldest son, one of 11, he was in a position to show us all what that should look like, what that should feel like, and how it should be shared. He shined in that position and lived his life to the very end, espousing these virtues, always caring about and loving dearly the people around him, not being afraid to tell them how he felt. I knew that was someone who I would be wise to use as a role model for myself, and I believe that in many of my major life decisions, I did just that. Perhaps the greatest gift I learned, or received, I should say, from Eddie, was making sure to let the people around you know how much you love them. Make sure not just to show it, but to say it every chance you can get. Thanks, Bob. Loving brother, see? In a note card he sent many years ago, which I was smart enough to save, he wrote, "Enjoy all that it is to be thankful for all the things that truly matter the most in life." I love you very much, Pete, Edwin. And I love you forever, Eddie, Ward, Godfather, Mr. Destructo, my dear brother Edwin.
So my name's Wayne. I'm speaking, I'm reading a piece for my dad. He couldn't be here today, unfortunately. So back in the day, I was known as Ed's littlest brother. If I was standing before you now, you'd see that would no longer be an appropriate description. Towards the end of Ed's life, us 5 brothers had 2 wonderful visits which naturally featured laughs, tears, and embellishments. In spite of everything he was dealing with, Ed was asking about us, our families, and how much firewood we had left. This was one of Ed's many endearing qualities, and it was with him his entire life. On what turned out to be Edwin's last day, Sandy and the 3 boys graciously opened up their home so that we could be with our dear brother at the end. So as sad as it is not to be here today, I feel blessed to have experienced these final treasured memories together. Goodbye to my big brother, Love Wesley. Mary's going to introduce Shenandoah.
So one of the record albums we had growing up was How the West Was Won, filled with history through folk songs. We listened to it so often we knew all the words, including Bing Crosby's intro to each track and Rosemary Clooney's harmony. One of Ed's favorites was Shenandoah, an old sea shanty song adapted by the boaters on the great American rivers. When Ed was putting together this service, he chose this song. The words are in your programs. Please join in. So now, please relax and enjoy a slideshow of remembrances that my brother Paul worked tirelessly to put together for you. Enjoy.
Love was right. There was no illusions on the summer side of life. Only tenderness. And if you saw him now, you'd wonder there was young girls everywhere on the summer side of life. They talked all night till the young men that they knew on the summer side of life, going off to fight. And if you saw them now, you'd wonder why they would cry the whole day long. He came down through fields of green on the summer side of life. He prayed all night. Then he walked into a house where love had been misplaced. Just chance to waste. And if you saw him now, you'd wonder why he would cry the whole day long. And if you saw him now, you'd wonder
This is for you, Daddy. I took my love and I took it down. I climbed a mountain and I turned around, and I saw my reflection in the snow-covered hills till the landslide brought me down. Oh, mirror in the Can I sail through the changing ocean tides? Can I handle the seasons of my life? I don't know. Well, I've been afraid of changing, 'cause I built my life around you. But time makes you bolder, children get older, and I'm getting older too. So I've been afraid of changing, 'cause I built my life around you. But time makes you bolder, children get older, I'm getting older too. I'm getting older too. So take this love, take it down. Oh, if you climb a mountain and you turn around, if you see my reflection in the snow-covered hills, where the landslide will bring it down, down. And if you see my reflection in the snow-covered hills, well, maybe the landslide will bring it down. Well, the landslide will bring it down.
The road is long, with many a winding turn that leads us to who knows where, who knows where. But I'm strong, strong enough to carry him. He ain't heavy, he's my brother. So on we go. His welfare is my concern. No burden is he to bear. We'll get there. For I know he would not encumber me. He ain't heavy, he's my brother. If I'm laden it all. I'm laden with sadness that everyone's heart isn't filled with the gladness of love for one another. It's a long, long road from which there is no return. While we're on our way to there, why not share? And the Lord doesn't weigh me down at all. He ain't heavy, he's my brother. He ain't heavy, he's my brother. Fairy tales can come true. It can happen to you if you're young at heart. For it's hard, you will find, to be narrow of mind if you're young at heart. You can go to extremes with impossible schemes. You can laugh when your dreams fall apart at the seams. And life gets more exciting with each passing day. And love is either in your heart or on its way. Don't you know that it's worth every treasure on earth to be young at heart? For as rich as you are, it's much better by far to be young at heart. And if you should survive to 105, look at all you'll derive out of being alive. And here is the best part, you have a head start if you are among the very young at heart. And if you should survive to 105, look at all you'll derive out of being alive. And here is the best part, you have a head start if you are among the very young at heart.
Thank you, Paul. That was beautiful. I don't know why I thought it would be a good idea to get up and talk after that. Whew. So at this point, we would like to invite a few of you to share your memories of Ed with one warning. For all of Ed's big personality and self-confidence, you've also heard that he was a really humble man. He made me promise that I wouldn't let this part of the program go on very long. He said he would be too embarrassed. So I'll apologize in advance if you don't get the opportunity to share before we have to move on. I hope you'll consider dropping your remembrance into the memory box downstairs so our family can share it and appreciate it at a later time. Anyone wishing to speak will need to come over here to the sanctuary to use the microphone. We will ask that you stand up front if you're sharing your remembrance, since this service is being live streamed. That way the folks who are watching from home and the people who are downstairs can see and hear you. And we will use this cordless microphone right here. 10 minutes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Grace Ekwabo, and hopefully I can do this. I knew Ed through MMU, and I have 4 children. Some of them were in the same class as Tyler and Matt, but Ed also had some of my children in his class. But one thing that really stuck with me, this happened over 20 years ago. Ed had my daughter in his class, and anyone that knew my daughter would know how important this was to me and my daughter. So one Friday evening, I got a call from Ed, and I was like, what happened? What happened? So he asked to speak to my daughter, and I said, okay. So her name is Ogochukwu. So I got her to the phone, and when she got out, she was like jumping. I said, what happened? It must be something good. And she said to me, Mr. Alexander just called me to tell me not to worry. He wanted me to have a good weekend, that I did so well in the tests. And I was like, what? The teacher did this? That shows how much Mr. Alexander or Ed cared about everybody. Talk about well-rounded person, caring in every way. You see him in the hallway, always smiling. And that smile is what I'll remember forever. He was a good man. And please accept my condolences. He will live among us. Thank you.
So hi, my name's Eric Hernandez. Coach Ed. I don't even know where to start, but best coach on the baseball field. Want everybody to get better. Just even if you were like the best player or the worst player, it didn't matter. He would put the same amount of effort and just make you so much better in every way. And one story I'll never forget is I was pitching one game. I had a complete game shutout, and then one kid hit a line drive on the shin right here. I was so mad, but it's fine. So I'm like down on the ground. I'm like, oh no, my leg. And he came out. He's like, him and my dad, assistant coach, Elijah came out too. He came out and he's like, Eric, you okay? You think you can finish it? And I'm like, yeah, I can finish it. So I'm never going to forget that he trusted me with that game, and he's like, can you finish it? I finished it, and 3 pitches, the kid out there, he was crying. He couldn't, he's like, shoot it. I mean, it's crazy that, he trusted me with that, and I don't think I'm ever going to forget that.
Hi, Calvin Alexander. I didn't have everything prepared. I didn't know there was going to be an open mic session, but just a chance to take my mask off, I guess. I just had to say something. I guess when I heard that Ed died, it didn't really hit me till just now. Thank you. Until sitting here, and seeing his pictures and everybody here that loves him. And I didn't have any brothers, a great sister, but no brothers. And Tyler and Matt been my brothers, basically. And I've looked up to them. Matt's 1 year older than me, Tyler 4 years older than me. And so Ed definitely did something right, because he's raised some amazing boys, and they've been my role models. So it's very blessed to know Uncle Ed. Love you, Ed.
Sticking to the 10-minute time limit, right? You're like afraid. Yeah. Okay. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? If not, we'll move on. Okay, great. So we'll invite Addison and Jesse back up for one final song, lighten things up, and keep on the sunny side.
Dark and a troubled side of life. There's a bright and a sunny side too. Though you meet with the darkness and strife, the sunny side we also may view. Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. It will help us every day, it will brighten all the way, if we keep on the sunny side of life. Though the storm and its fury broke today, crushing hopes that we cherish so dear, the clouds and storm will in time pass away, and the sun again will shine bright and clear. Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. It will help us every day, it will brighten all the way, if we keep on the sunny side of life. Let us greet with a song of hope each day, though the moment be cloudy or fair. And let us trust in our Savior way, who keepeth everyone in his care. Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. It will help us every day, it will brighten all the way, if we keep on the sunny side of life.
Hi, I'm Susie. Thank you all for joining us today in the celebration of Ed's life. As the surviving parents of Ed's 3 children, Sandy, Dennis, and I, ask that you join us in acknowledging and celebrating the greatest gifts he gave to us all, Tyler, Elijah, and Matt. We celebrate them together with Amy, Christy, and our grandchildren, Caroline, Grant, and Owen, and the generations to follow who will carry on Ed's tremendous legacy. Thank you so much.
And now we'd like to invite Tyler, Matt, and Elijah to lead us in the conclusion of our celebration.
Thank you all very much for enduring an Alexander funeral. We will lighten it up a little bit downstairs here in a moment. Feel free to join us for some light refreshments. And finally, my father, when he eulogized his father, my grandfather, Wayne Henry Alexander, he concluded with a round of applause. So in keeping with that tradition and in honor of a life very well lived, please join Elijah, Matt, and I in offering my father a round of applause.
Don't sit down. With that, we'll welcome everyone downstairs for some refreshments and conversation.